Hey everyone. Today I want to talk a little bit about embedded wallet and their security, why they're the best system for onboarding new users and what the security challenges are and how we can solve them. So I'm Norswap, I'm the founder of HappyChain, and one of the things we built is the Happy Wallet, which is one such embedded wallet. So very quickly, I'll explain Web3 versus Web2 onboarding, which is a quick motivation for why we care about this at all. Some problems with existing embedded wallet, how we go from social login for something like Google and Twitter to an on-chain account, and then various attack vectors against embedded wallets and how we can defend against them. So when you onboard a Web3 user, imagine a user has never used crypto at all. Doesn't have a wallet, doesn't have funds, anything. Looks something like the diagram here. They're gonna connect, click the button. Hopefully, the interface will tell them, if you don't have a wallet, install a wallet. So they'll do that. They have to understand what a seed phrase is. They have to pick a password. They have to secure a seed phrase so that hackers don't get it, but also so they don't lose it. And then there's this whole other thing. They gotta get gas token, which first of all, figure out how, because unlike installing a wallet, instructions are usually not really included. So they might open a centralized exchange account, or they might be lucky and have in the wallet directly a credit card on ramp. So then they put their payment details, and then comes a part that could have been a third screen, which is if the chain that they're trying to onboard is not supported by the credit card on ramp or by the centralized exchange, they gotta figure out how to bridge, and that's a whole nother issue. So, in marketing, they call this a funnel. This is the funnel from hell. Nobody makes it out the other side. Maybe some people do if they think they're going to get very, very rich. On the other hand, on Web2 app, you connect, you have your classical auth with Google, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. If the app is paid, you put your credit cards in, and you're done. So that's very simple. Now we have something in Web3 that lets us do that, and these are the embedded wallets. You might be familiar with Privy. There's Capsule, I think now it's called Para, Web3 Auth, Third Web, OpenForce. There's a lot of people doing this. Okay, so are we done? Can we stop the presentation? No, we can't, because these things have security issues. So the classical issue with embedded wallet today is that they fully trust the app. They create an account for every app. First of all, that's not ideal from a usability perspective. But the reason they do this is that the app is completely trusted. And it's really, really dumb. The issue is this little thing on the right of the screen. It's a modal, right? Displays within the app. And models are nice. They always work. They are fast, they're snappy, they look good. But if I'm a bad guy and this displays on my app, I can just paint over the signing part. So this is a bad example because it doesn't say what you're signing in the first place. So this is already insecure. But say it said mint free NFT. Well, maybe that's what I painted on top, and then underneath it's gonna drain all my funds. And I click sign thinking, yay, free NFT, but actually I lose all my money. So it's called clickjacking, and so that's one of the reasons why apps must be trusted. And because of that, it's kind of fine if you do it just for one app because you cannot trust the app anyway. But if you go to multiple apps, a single malicious app can drain all your funds, so you absolutely can't do that. So the solution is pop-ups. Little pop-up on the right, this is from the Happy Wallet. We're not the best designers, but this is what we got. Pop-ups, they suck, right? Like browsers sometimes block them. Sometimes they go under your browser window. If you're using Safari, you're gonna have a bad time. Fuck Safari. But they're secure, which is why Google uses them and everyone uses them for Google Auth. If you look at Google Auth, you never have a little model. It's always a pop-up or a full redirect flow. And there's a reason for that. How do we solve that specific issue? We can use something called session keys, which is the best of both worlds. You trust apps, but only with a limited scope of interaction. So the app is able to make transaction to a target contract. Maybe there's spending limits, things of that nature. And then since you trust the app, you don't even need the model. You can just let the app do the transactions. Something similar that has been proposed by Coinbase is to sub-accounts. So in this case, you create more accounts, but they're hierarchically under the main account, and they get permissions from it. It's pretty much the same thing, ultimately. So something that's important when you think about the social device, the social login system is how do we go from my Google account to an on-chain account, right? To an address that's on-chain and can make transactions. You use cryptography. You use multi-party computation to generate a private key. And then you're gonna split it into multiple shares. And we're gonna classify these shares in 3 buckets. So there's many ways to do this. I'm gonna present what I think is one of the best systems, and that's implemented by some of the providers. So in this system, you split them in 3 buckets. There's a device share that lives on your device. It's kind of device 2FA. There's a backup share you keep safe somewhere. And then there's an auth share that lives on someone's server. So if I'm having my wallet, the Happy wallet, then I'm gonna put, this is my server. You can also decentralize that with a network. It's not necessary, but it's a nice extra little touch, let's say. And then what you do is you need 2 out of these 3 factors. You need 1 share of 2 out of these 3 factors to be able to sign. And then there's 2 schemes. There's TSS, that stands for Threshold Signing Scheme. And so in that mode, the various parties, so it's gonna be you and the auth server, are gonna come together to sign a transaction. And the nice thing about the TSS is that the key is never reconstructed in memory in anyone's device. The other one is called SSS, is Shamir Secret Sharing. And in that one, you, the user, are gonna reconstruct the key on the client. Should still be secure, so both of those are fine. Yeah, the nice thing about this is if me, the wallet provider, is malicious, I cannot do anything by myself because I only have 1 share and you need 2. If you lose your device, you can still, use the backup share and the auth share to recuperate. If you lose your Google account, same thing, you still have 2 shares. If you lose your backup, you can make a new one. So this solves a lot of UX issues that we have with traditional wallets as well, right? Where you lose your MetaMask account and your seed phrase, you're kind of fucked. Hello? No problem here. Oh, I think it just went to sleep. So what, yeah. Important thing, many providers don't do this. They only have 2 shares or 1, or some of them, what they do is really funny, is they have a backup share, but then they have it on a server themselves, and they will often say, yeah, well, it's a third-party provider, we can't touch it, but you can still have to trust that they're not lying on that. Someone's gonna ask about passkey, of course, so I gotta talk about them. Passkeys, on the nice side, they can be verified on chain. So, that's okay. Right now, it requires high gas for a precompile, but I think this is all gonna be solved. We personally don't use it in the Happy Wallet, and the reason is the UX is not very good. It's especially not good cross-device. So if you have a Mac and an iPhone, probably works. If you have Chrome, both devices, probably works. Everyone else is gonna have maybe a bit of a hard time to synchronize things. So what you would do is authorize multiple passkeys, but it's a little bit more work. Versus the split private key scheme that we had before, you're back to a self-custody model where you can just lose your passkey, just like you can lose your wallet. And it's even worse because you don't have the little paper with the seed phrase. And it's really hard to export out these keys and re-import them other places. There's just many report problem, and the reality is it just kind of doesn't work some of the time. And as someone that's making a product, I would think if something doesn't work 2% of the time, it's not acceptable. I think passkeys in practice are actually much worse than that. But they are a nice backup, a way to do backups, the backup share. That could be a good use, I think, for passkeys. And I think they'll get there eventually, but today not really. Okay, so this, I cannot touch on this, and I'm gonna skip quickly. Basically, the 2 out of 3 model is really nice. But the one that's complicated is the backup key. Because you don't want, as you onboard a user, to be like, hey, there's a backup, where do you want to put it? You just want the user to get started as fast as possible. So there's 2 ways to sort of help with that. One is you don't do a backup and you add it later when the user puts money in his wallet. The other one is you do the centralized approach, but you only do it temporarily. So you will keep the backup with the auth provider. And then whenever user has value, you'll tell them, hey, secure your wallet, and then you delete the previous one, and then you add a new one. Many ways to do backups. And then something to pay attention to, if the user logged in with Google, don't let them save the backup on Google Drive, because now you're back as if someone takes over the Google account, they can access everything. Okay, so how can we attack embedded wallets? There's many ways. You can take over the DNS address, the domain. You can take over the server. You can poison its dependencies, and you can inject scripts. So browser extensions in your browser, they can inject script in any page you visit. And that then could cause some issues. Compared to browser extension like MetaMask and Phantom, they have much less of these issues. They basically just have the supply chain attacks. DNS and server, if it's well done, it's not an issue. I don't know exactly how it's implemented in practice during when it runs. It's definitely an issue in install, but that means someone takes over the Google Chrome store. So should be okay, hopefully. DNS hijack says when someone takes over your domain, basically. So an example of an attack that you can look up is DNS cache poisoning. The problem is, as you serve the wallet, it's an embedded wallet, right? So you do a fetch from a server to get the wallet code. That code can access the device share, and it can request signing from the auth share because you've performed authentication with Google and the user doesn't suspect anything. So basically, it can sign anything. So there's a thing called DNSSEC for DNS security, where the root domain, so say you're mywallet.com, the .com will sign your domain. There's a bunch of issues with that, and anyway, there's a better way to do this. But like one interesting way would be I have a private key on my server, and then the app, so the thing that runs in the user browser, will sign the key from will check a signature from the key of the server. All this doesn't matter if your DNS register account is compromised, because then the attacker can just point your domain whenever he wants, and it all looks good. So the big one is, what if someone takes over your server? You should try that this never happens. This is like the worst that can happen to you, as you all know. But there are solutions. And they also, interestingly, protect against you, the wallet provider, being malicious. So if your code is open source, people can audit the code, and they can use this approach I'm going to describe to make sure that you're not serving them malware. So basically what you do has to do with the architecture of these wallets. So there's the app, which is something made by a third party. And the app's going to use your software development kit, your SDK, to embed your wallet. And that's going to then fetch, when the app is serving, the wallet code. So you have two parts. You have SDK, and that's typically going to be NPM package, and you have your wallet code. So basically what you do is you put a hash of the wallet code inside the SDK. And when you fetch the wallet code, the SDK will verify that the code matches the hash. So this is really nice in terms of security, but it limits what you can do with your wallet, because when you want to update your wallet, not only do you have to update the wallet code that you're serving, but you also have to update the SDK, and people have to update it in their apps. So one solution you can do is sort of limit this approach to only the critical code that has access to the signing logic, and then let the rest update independently. Do providers do this today? I don't know. I have reasonable doubts, having seen some of the practices, but it would be interesting to find out. So supply chain attacks is when you write software, use dependencies written by other people, probably code you haven't read or audited. And this code could, in some way, trigger signing. So in JavaScript, it's not true generally that anybody that runs code can call any code, but they can do still a lot of things that could let them do that eventually. An example of this is something called ambient authority, where they can change the global. So the array class that you use to create an array, you can change all the methods in that, and then via that way, when your trusted code creates an array, it does all kinds of nefarious things, like saving all the data you put there, like signatures, changing the content of the arrays. Thankfully, there are solutions, and here I gotta show that Agoric and MetaMask have done really good work on this. There's this thing called SCS, which is a framework that really locks down the globals and makes sure that basically foreign code cannot interfere with your code. I don't really have time to go into this, but I really recommend this video called Hardened JavaScript by Chris Cowell. It really does a good job of explaining what the issue is and then how you can fix it. This lockdown stuff might be a lot of work, so again, you can minimize by just applying this to the critical section of your code. And another thing that's important is all the code that runs can access local storage, so never store secrets in the browser local storage. So in conclusion, wallet security is a hydra with many heads, and embedded wallets, they had a lot of security concerns, just because of the nature that every time you visit a web page, you're hitting the server instead of installing something once and then using the same code over. But they unlock the best onboarding for new users. And honestly, even for existing users, the fact that you can use these 3 types of factor to recover from losses of various accounts is a really nice property. So we have solutions. Let's just make sure that we all use them. And free pitch at the end. So what we're doing at HappyChain, what we're doing is we're building this blockchain platform for gaming with the idea of onboarding Web2 players and Web2 builders into making Web3 games. Turns out VCs don't want to fund that. But the main thing we built is the wallet, right? And the reason we did that is because the first slide of this presentation, nobody's going to install MetaMask and go to Coinbase to just play a little web game, right? Just wouldn't happen. So we had to build a wallet to onboard the users. And it turns out it's a lot more valuable than that. And it applies to a bunch of things like DeFi, right? You could go to a DeFi app and from the DeFi app, if you never use crypto, you log in with social and then you top up from your credit card right in the wallet. And then you can use DeFi app. And all the while you've been staying on the DeFi app webpage. So that's what we're building, and then of course we got to make that stuff secure. It's sort of our selling point is that this is a wallet you can use on multiple apps and it is secure. So that's why we're thinking very hard about that stuff. Some of what I talked about we've already implemented. A lot we have not. But yeah, so if you're interested to know more, just let me know. And I think we have time for questions. So if there's any questions, feel free to shoot.